Tom E. Curran. How we doing this week?
Tremendous. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing excellent, as always. We carried Mike Vrabel live for his press conference. We had some takeaways. He had updates on Steph Diggs, updates on Terrell Williams, even more minor updates on guys like Carlton Davis and when they'll be out there. What jumped out to you today from Vrabel?
I mean, a lot of it was housekeeping stuff, so not a ton. I was intrigued by the notion of how much progress they've made in terms of at least identifying what they think is bad football. And I do think I don't think it's necessarily a shot at Mayo. I think it's more, what do I consider bad football? What Bill used to say was he would only talk to certain coaches about what he wanted in a player because those coaches oftentimes understood what he defined as a good player. So I think everybody has different definitions. So I don't think it was necessarily a shot at Mayo, but it is important because they've been a frankly, a stupid football team for most of the decade. They have played stupid football, and it's happened from their best players. And the best example continues to be the Raiders' loss in 2023, where their three best offensive players executed one of the most bizarre plays in NFL history, as far as I'm concerned.
That was an all-timer. I don't know. It's like losing on a catcher's interference. Is that type of play?
The stupidest thing I ever saw.
It was wild. Tom, the timeline since they acquired Steph Diggs has obviously taken some turns, and there's been some ups and downs. But if you just keep it to just the injury part of it, when they signed him, you knew he was a guy that tore his ACL midway through the season, and there was going to be a bit of a recovery. The fact that he has passed his physical and he is not on the PUP list or anything like that, and he has no limitations going into tomorrow is really as good a news as possible that we probably could have received about Steph Diggs.
Yeah, and it really, for a team that came out of free agency and the draft with no real number one wide receiver, to be able to find a guy who was on pace for 1,000 yards, who, when at his best, was probably one of the best 3 to 7 wide receivers in the league. And there's really few indications that we've seen that he isn't still an effective wide receiver. To be able to have him out there from the outset, to be able to have him out there working with other players and having May get used to his rhythm, tempo, routes, what he likes, what he doesn't like is really huge. Honestly, with that in mind, guys, do you think that Stefon Diggs' performance should be maybe recalculated as to what you can expect? I've kind of thought that if he goes for 55 and 800, that would be good. Now I wonder if it could be 70, 75 and 1,000 or 1050. And I think that if he's ready to go at the beginning of camp, why not?
No, see, I agree with that 1,000%. If he's out there 17 games, he should be a 1,000-yard receiver. I did brag. I did TV with your pal there, Phil Perry, last night. He seems more down on Steph Diggs than I expected. But I'm with you, Curran. I'm personally revising my expectations upward. It's interesting you use the word expectations there. That was what Vrabel was asked about today in relation to Christian Gonzalez. I thought he took the answer in an odd direction, and you tell me if you had a similar read. He brought up his job being to maximize the earning potential for an individual, but keep that balance within the framework of the team. Is there an issue with Gonzalez and his contract? That was kind of my takeaway. What is that?
Sometimes you're in a press conference and you hear the beginning part of a question and then you look at something and you're taking a note and you don't hear the rest. And all of a sudden I heard Mike giving a very, very good answer about the business of football and the individual and making money. Like, what the hell is he talking about this for? I didn't even really hear the question. But, I don't know why he veered in that direction. However, if you look at Christian Gonzalez, if you look at Drake May, these are individuals who are in very short order going to be getting contracts anywhere between 150 and, $200 million based upon the rise in salaries at their positions and their youth and their performance, one presumes. So I don't know why he veered in that direction. I don't know if it needs amplifying that, okay, you have to stay in our system here. You don't have to be all Christian. I haven't really seen that with him, but he's so, as you pointed out, tight-lipped. He's kind of a closed book in terms of interpreting what his motivations are. or his motivation to win championships, or Ty, perhaps my favorite Patriot of all time. You always knew where he stood.
Yeah.
And oftentimes Ty was at the front of the bus looking for his first, which was fine because he figured, look, if I'm playing the way I should, the team's going to profit from it, and so am I. So, but Kristen doesn't seem to operate that way.
No.
A little bit of a less is more approach from Gonzalez in our experience interviewing him.
Perhaps. I don't know if it's more, but less is less.
Less could also be less in this case. Knowing what you know about Vrabel, how do you think Gonzalez is used this year? Because I know that's always a big center of attention when it comes to corners and evaluating corners, whether they just take the best player, whether they move around the field, whether they're on one side. How do you think they're going to most likely use Gonzo this season?
That's a good question that I really don't have a ready answer to. I mean, do they usually travel their guys with the number ones? Do they put their best corner on the second best receiver and start to double the number one, as Bill used to do frequently with Revis or Talib? I don't know. I honestly don't. I don't know what if Mike has necessarily had, whether it be at Tennessee or Houston when he was a defensive coordinator, a corner of Gonzalez ilk. But you have two long corners on both sides. I think it might serve them well to leave them alone. But I mean, I'm guessing, Rich. I'm sorry.
I'm curious, and I think that's one thing to kind of watch too, like this training camp. Another thing to keep an eye on because
the size matchup.
Yeah,
honestly, the size matchup shouldn't be able to be exploited as it has been in the past because both guys are over 6 feet,
right,
and smooth.
Tom, you posted yesterday your latest at NBC Sports Boston, the 10 Patriots with the most at stake on the eve of training camp getting started tomorrow at Gillette. A bunch of names on the list, 1, 2, and 3, Drake May, Mike Vrabel, Robert Kraft. Why are those guys at the top of your list?
Drake May, because he's the third overall pick, and I think nationally and locally it's presumed that he's going to have a retro rocket attached to his posterior, and he's going to elevate to being a guy who is at least in the Pro Bowl conversation and one of the best young players in the NFL. And if he's not that, people are going to say, wow, I thought he was supposed to be really good, forgetting the fact that, you know, he's won one game in the NFL, and when he left the field, he was not electric in his final year at North Carolina State. He's working with, North Carolina. He's working with another new offensive coordinator. I'm probably going to give him a little more rope than I think most people will, but he's going to have a ton of heat. With Vrabel, it's obvious there are people who are not looking at the roster, and again, the same thing that is existing with May, and saying, well, it's going to be better than last year, and the definition of that is, in some instances, 2.5 times better, 10 wins. And with Robert Kraft, I wrote in that story that he did an amazing thing, and he's often done this. He is more adept than almost anyone at both self-flagellating and patting himself on the back at the same time. And he was able to do that in 1 week with the Mayo situation and then the Vrabel situation. And I don't disagree with him. He really was pinned at a point where there was going to be very little enthusiasm for this Patriots team in 2025. I think if Mayo had stayed as kind of a lame duck. So he had to acknowledge the mistake and move on from Gerard. And he did hire the most appropriate coach, in my estimation, for this franchise and the best candidate out there in the 2025 cycle. So, but I think there's a lot of heat on him, especially too, Jonesy. There is $60 million more in cap space left out there. And I know they tried to spend it, but they didn't spend it. So I would point to that.
I got another name for you. It didn't make your list of the top 10, but Rhamondre Stevenson, I feel like going into this camp with the contract that he has, there is certainly a scenario where he just ends up being the best running back on the team, has the best season of all the running backs on the team, and you kind of you take it and run with it. Or the flip side, where Henderson really comes on strong as a second-round pick. Gibson is just kind of really you're solid. You know what you have in Gibson. And maybe Rhamondre, who's not a Mike Vrabel guy. Mike Vrabel didn't draft Rhamondre. Maybe he ends up kind of third on the depth chart. And then if he's third on the depth chart, is he even worth keeping around?
Yeah, I ran out of steam. He was on my list of people to mention. And I said, you know what? We're going to stop it here at 10.
Yeah, 10 13. Sounds better. The top 10 definitely is more snappy than a top 11.
I had Baker's dozen, but he was in there. I look at that as I'm right there with you. He's one of the most highly paid running backs in the league. not the same as it was last year. It's gone up a bit, but he's still top 10 in average annual value. And I don't think that anyone will look at him in the top 15 running backs in the league, unfortunately, even though the talent is there. You can't actively undo the success of your football team by dropping the ball on a continually regular basis and be one of the better backs in the league. It's that simple. So does he go from 7 to 1 or 2 fumbles this year? Or is that kind of a malady? He gets hit so early in the backfield. It's insane because the Patriots didn't provide any kind of offensive line support for him in the last 3 seasons. So should be better this year. He should be better this year. If he's not, then it's not because he's a bad player. It's just he's not playing up to his contract. So, look, Gibson was better than him last year. Ezekiel Elliott was better than him the year before. You need your more highly paid players to be your best players. That's the way it goes with Onwenu, too, who's on the Heat list, and that's the way it is for Milton Williams, who's on the Heat list.
That is the Heat Index, the 10 Patriots with the most at stake as training camp begins, +1 with Rhamondre Stevenson. You can check it out, NBC Sports Boston. You can also follow Tom on Twitter at Tom E. Curran. He joins us every Tuesday on a Tom E. Tuesday.